I was just doing that, just to. Okay, we'll call this meeting to order. This is the October 17th meeting of the Westminster Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for attending. We have some business tonight. One of them is a public hearing, and then we have a work session after that. So the public hearing is on zoning map amendment ZMA 2401. It reclassifies certain property from R75 residential to planned development non-zone. The properties are identified on the assessment maps and are located off the east of Pennsylvania Avenue and north of Sullivan Avenue. The applicant is proposing to construct 22/2 dwellings for a total of 40 units. How we'll conduct this hearing is first, we'll hear from our staff, Mr. Depot, then the applicant will make his presentation, and then after that, any comments from the public, that will be the opportunity to do that. So, Mr. Depot?
Thank you. Good evening. So again, this is zoning map amendment ZMA 2401. And as already outlined, the proposal is to reclassify certain property from the R7500 residential zone, planned development PD9 zone. And again, the intent to construct 2/2 dwellings for 40 dwelling units. So essentially the 2/2s, if anybody not familiar with those, it looks like a townhouse stick, but the first 2 floors is 1 dwelling unit, floors 3 and 4 are second dwelling units in that stick. That's 2/2. 2 floors over 2 floors, 2 floors each being a dwelling unit. That's where you get the 20 total townhouse looking buildings, but a total of 40 dwelling units. That's been explained in case anybody's wondering. So the location of the property, it's just northeast of Schaefer and Pennsylvania Avenue. It's outlined in red. It's made up of multiple parcels. Ultimately, these parcels would have to be consolidated into one parcel as it moves through the process. If the PD9 is applied, primary access will be off of Pennsylvania Avenue. Again, as stated, it's currently zoned R7500. The applicant, as you recall, there were 3 proposals for the project. This was the original project. Zoomed in, you can see access over Pennsylvania Avenue and access through, and you can see the 2/2 sticks. And this went through the work session process earlier. So this was option 2. You can see that it changed a little bit with access, and then option 3. As you recall, I think Planning and Zoning Commission and staff favored option 3. The applicant has provided this updated rendering of option 3 of the proposed development. So again, you have your main access coming into the site. Parking along that access drive was removed for some of the discussions through the process. The larger field and open space separating the buildings, and then obviously the buildings themselves. The reason that's separated as they are, there's a limit to 12 dwelling units per building. So that's why you don't have a continuous or longer stick of housing. One, it provides, I think, some separation and clearance between buildings, and I think provides a little bit better of a design for the site. The architecture proposed, there were concerns for architecture. We did not receive any additional architectural elevations from the last meeting. So that's still a concern from staff. As you recall, I'm looking a little bit more upgraded material, more particularly into the rear of the site. Oh, it's very touchy. Where it's more with blank walls, you can see here, staff is asking that this be elevated or be improved. Architecture, other elements too. As part of the architecture, staff would be looking at additional noise attenuation, maybe in the material of the development itself due to its proximity to 140.
Mr. Depot, this
Yeah.
wasn't in the package that we have, is it?
No, we just got this morning.
Okay, so you
So
can
I
email it
apologize,
to
yes,
us. Yeah.
yes.
Okay, great.
But it does mimic this. It's just a nice coloring.
No, it's just nice to see a little bit more detail. Yeah,
Yes.
that's helpful.
It
Thank you.
does pop a little bit better. You can see some of the stormwater management facilities on the site as well. That are proposed. There is a secondary access, as you can see here. That would be, currently the access drive is in this location, but we've extended up and also improved by the developer. The developer also would be working, we need to work with the adjacent property owners for access to this to improve those access points as well, or at least maintain them.
Now, that access point is not going to be as wide, at least it does not look as wide on there as what the main entrance is off of Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
Yes, this is the pre-existing right of way.
Okay.
This is the. This is
Limited in
actually
how
where it's
wide it can be.
Limited, exactly. But it will be improved over what it is today. At least that's the proposal by the applicant. Just to go over some of the processes for the meeting. This application was introduced to the Planning and Zoning Commission on May 29th, 2024. In addition, the zoning administrator notified the commission of its public hearing, which is being held tonight. Prior to that, following the introduction, the commission voted to forward the application to a future work session. This actually occurred, as I referred to earlier, on August 29th, 2023. Where we touched on a lot of these topics and where essentially we narrowed down to this third option. Following this meeting or following the public hearing, at such time the planning commission closes the record. The next step ultimately would be the planning commission providing a recommendation whether to approve with conditions, or deny the request to reclassify the property. And a report associated with that recommendation, and that will be forwarded to the mayor and common council. The next step following this public hearing would be forwarding this to mayor and common council public hearing for consideration. Ultimately, an ordinance would be drafted from the recommendation that's provided by the planning commission. And that is what the ordinance is what the mayor and common council will ultimately be hearing and voting on.
Just so it's clear for everybody, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Depot. So after the public hearing tonight, the planning commission could take however many meetings they want to continue to work session it with the developer before we forward any recommendation to the mayor and common council.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, public hearing ultimately is open to the public for public comment. Following tonight's meeting or through action by the Planning and Zoning Commission, you can keep the record open, close the record by certain dates. But you're right, you can continue having meetings. If you do close the record, any meeting following that would not be otherwise open to the public. It would just be up with the Planning and Zoning Commission to discuss the application and to provide its recommendations.
And then when it goes to the mayor and common council, there's an opportunity for public comment then as well.
Yes.
Once it gets there. Okay.
Yes. The ordinance we first introduced to the mayor and common council, again, which is drafted from the recommendation by the planning commission. That's why we do this process. Then after introduced, it would come back to the mayor and common council for public hearing and ultimately for a decision, again, whether to approve with conditions or deny.
Does the rezoning ordinance, is that both for the zone and do they approve a development plan with it as part of that process?
Yes, as part of the process. Again, that's up to the Planning and Zoning Commission. You can provide conditions, whether specifically this development plan is attached as part of your recommendation. In other words, the Planning Commission was to recommend approval subject to the design plans being proposed or being accepted by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
But does the mayor and council have to approve that development plan?
Yes, it would be part of the I would assume, or we would place within the ordinance. If that is the action of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the ordinance itself would have language holding the developer and the approval of the application of rezoning as a condition, maintaining the approval of the Planning and Zoning Commission. If there was to be a change, it would go against the ordinance itself and would have to come back to the planning commission and then ultimately back to the mayor and common council
But those
if they did not follow through with the.
But those are material changes, because I mean, obviously during construction, you could have a, you know, a.
Yes, substantial change.
Substantial, thank you.
All right, anything further?
It did, so this project did also go in front of the Economic Community Development Committee. Where they did recommend that dwelling units to front on the, units to front of the. Recommend dwelling units to, at the front of the property again, which is being proposed tonight. It's basically in this area here. It's these buildings here. So again, it's maintaining that basically this maintains the plan that was originally approved or reviewed by the ECDC, where the buildings were further pushed forward. But through the planning commission recommendation, we provided this open space area. And the ECDC was in favor of the density, the 2/2 unit concept as well. And with that, that staff is recommending that the Planning and Zoning Commission review the zoning map amendment ZMA 2401 and provide comments to the mayor and common council. And that completes my report. I'm available for any questions.
Okay, any commission members have any questions at this point? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant, which I assume is Mr. Bowersox is representing the applicant.
Good evening. I'm Dave Bowersox, 24 North Court Street, Westminster, Maryland, on behalf of the proponent, the developer of this site.
Mr. Bowersox, if you don't mind, just speaking up a little bit, the acoustics in here, we're gonna eventually upgrade the sound system, but it's not great. I have my hearing aids on, I'll turn them up, but it's kind of hard at times.
Okay. I'll try to do better.
Thank you.
Mr. Depot has given a good chronology of where we've been so far in this process. It's fairly accurate. This is a PD9 application. The PD9 is a floating zone, as the staff report acknowledges, in the city of Westminster. So it is a change in zoning. So ultimately, the decision is with the legislative body, the town council. So your role in this phase of things is to review the plans in front of you and make a recommendation to the council on the development plan and the zoning. A couple of points I'd like to make initially in response to some of the commission's questions to Mr. Depot. Mr. Baird mentioned the development plan. Does that have to be approved also? Yes, according to the ordinance, and it's not unusual in a floating zone, it does have to be approved. Because usually these are design-based projects. They're not code-driven projects. In other words, it's not like a Euclidean subdivision where if the zoning's already there, they come in and design whatever they design. This is being zoned for a particular development. So it's that hybrid kind of thing. That being said, the development plan in a floating zone application is not the same as a site plan. So the development plan, this may not be the best analogy, is more like a overall concept plan or scheme. You're not going to see a high level of engineering as you would in a site plan, because we don't know what the council's going to want to do or any other changes that may come up. But it should be something that all parties can agree upon initially are going to be fundamental required features of a project. I just wanted to clarify that. We're here tonight. We're going to ask you for a favorable recommendation. We have we are familiar with the staff report. Mr. Depot is correct that this new rendering was provided and acknowledged today. There was some discussion about the architecturals. Architecturals are forthcoming. You may recall on August 29th, the majority of the commissioners, sorry, Mr. Huff, preferred option 3 over option 2 was presented. And that's what we've pursued here with this submission. A number of the questions, I believe, that remained kind of open, as mentioned in the staff report, have been addressed by this rendering, and I'll go into that. Specifically, the dimensional requirements and density, no more than 10 acres, we fit. They are 2/2s, no more than 6 in a stick. And we believe that you can see this has clarified any difference that there may have been between prior submissions, which may have showed more. Dimensional requirements. The open space, I'm told that this rendering reflects a development plan that does have open space that is required by the code. Off-street parking, we have sufficient off-street parking. We're looking at, I believe the staff report says 5 per unit. We have 5 per building, not 5 per unit. We have 100 parking spaces available. Let's see. There's also the compatibility element that is present in the code, and I'm not sure if that's specifically addressed, but the compatibility element kind of in your code specifically talks about minimum distances from adjacent residential improvements. And this plan number 3 does accommodate that. Now, I'll answer whatever questions I can. If questions of a more technical nature are probably best fielded by Mr. Hackett. And we would, as I mentioned, request favorable recommendation.
I do have,
Mr. Huffman.
I do have, and I'm gonna stand up just to make life easier to, and of course, this is the first time I'm seeing, this version of it. But 2 technical questions. Number 1, I noticed there's a sidewalk on this side. Was there any discussion about having a sidewalk on this side of the road as well? And like a little bit of detail about that. And then, right now, this is just kind of open space, just blank open space. What was the conversation or thought about what to do about that particular block? I mean, I see you kind of have a good feel for kind of how you're planning on using the other open space. I see the stormwater, but if you could talk a little bit about the sidewalk on this side, what the conversation was, and then also, this little area right
So
there.
I think I'll turn this presentation over, at least for now, to Mr. Hackett for that.
Good evening, Marty Hackett, CLSI, 439 East Main Street. Mr. Hoffy, on the right side entering the project, grade wise, we got the sidewalk on basically an area where it fits grade. The lower side is going to have it's going to be a slight retaining wall in there. It'd be a nice block wall, it'd be landscape. So we figure we keep it, because we made extra room there when we got rid of the parallel parking spaces that the planning commission wanted. So that's what we proposed in the meeting.
So is the road here and you're saying the grade is up here on the,
Or
or
it'll
which,
be more on grade on the left side coming in, and it'll be a little higher on the lower side with a little wall that will actually face the adjoining neighbors.
so retaining wall right here?
Yeah.
The grade is higher over here though? Or is the higher over here, it's higher over here, right?
I think it will, grade wise, as we're going down into the site also, we're actually descending
Okay,
from Pennsylvania Avenue to get down to grade.
Okay.
About the,
the
on the retaining wall. Is there enough room there on the lower, say the lower part of the drive to push the retaining wall back a little bit, still put a sidewalk in running across the curb or alongside of the curb and not necessarily separated from it?
There may be. And the only reason I say it is because engineering wise, if the use gets approved, as far as that goes and we proceed, then we'll get into a lot of, which will, just by the way, this site, when it gets recommended by the development plan, Mr. Bowersox was saying, similar to a concept or a preliminary, we have to submit a site plan to the city that's gonna go through the process. And it's gonna come back to you with even more detail. I would like to address the building elevations. We're flexible on still the design as we critique the design going through the process. I will tell you, our client couldn't make it today because he got an infection and a knee replacement, so he's sort of bedridden. But we did talk about it. At the architectural level, he will have sketches when he comes in front of the mayor and council. For the rear and sides of the building that were kind of questionable. And so he's gonna be adding masonry to the water lines and all that stuff. Basically, so you'll see a lot more masonry around the side and around the back of the buildings to break that up a little bit.
so I think, and I can't speak for the whole planning commission, but I think that we're gonna probably wanna see on this level, some of that before we send it, you know what I mean, send it up to the mayor. And
Yep.
yeah, I think we're gonna wanna see that before we send a recommendation forward. What about that green space that I was talking about? What is the intention to do with that?
Well, right now we got it as a passive open space. We have 2 locations that are centered to where people can walk their dogs. There's a dog walk area. In 2 locations where you come out the 4 buildings that are in the first initial area. It's in general proximity there. And then we try to cover a little bit further back so people didn't have so far to walk. So there's 2 locations.
So this area and this area here,
Correct.
and Commissioner Upwards talking about this green space.
Mr. Hackett, that rectangular piece of property there's a retaining wall between that parking lot and that rectangular piece, correct?
Yes, there is a small
So
wall.
what is the elevation difference?
The wall in there is about 3 feet. What we were looking at, about 3 feet, 84, but it's not. And that can be, we can certainly landscape it. As we get involved in the design, it could end up being a bioretention area, at this point, but that area, it could easily be landscaped as far as more screening goes and all that.
So is your open space requirement 20%?
20 to 25%.
I was just looking to the new options didn't provide an open space. I was gonna ask you that. 20%, you're right, is the requirement for open space.
And how much of that how much of that open space is actually what we call usable, where it's something that people can actually enjoy? And not just grass?
It's, you're looking probably 15%. I can get those numbers and total them up. As far as everything, obviously, there's a lot of green space throughout the whole project. But the area that we were focusing on, where you see the walkways and stuff, we were planning on park benches, picnic tables and stuff.
So again, back to that area that you just said was gonna just be passive open space, the blotch of just, or the rectangle of just green. Is that gonna be a pretty level area, or what is that gonna look like, Mr. Hackett? Is that a pretty level area or?
Try to leave it in just natural state.
Okay, what is that pretty level right now? Or
I don't have the topo in front of me on
yeah.
that, but yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure to answer your question correctly, but.
So the intention is not, you're not putting a path in, you're not putting benches there, you're just gonna leave it as open space. If I wanted to go out there and play frisbee or whatever, I could do that.
There'll probably be actually a little bit more room actually in the front open space that we have.
Okay.
Any,
We were trying to keep it focal, centered. Plus it keeps, try to focus, keep the people internally to the property.
No, I'm just, the reason I keep on focusing on that, because it's kind of like appendage to the, do you know what I mean? Like, it just is there, so I'm trying to just get a better sense of how you guys are planning from a development standpoint to kind of make that space work, because it's kind of just hanging out there. And that's, no fault of yours, it's just the nature of the site of the property.
how many separate parcels does this site? A lot?
I think it's four.
Seven, I thought it was seven, about seven parcels that make up this.
So the idea at some point, when you get to that stage, there would be subdivision that would consolidate into one plat.
Yes,
Yeah, yes.
we'll probably do a special purpose plan to consolidate all the parcels.
Eight. Eight parcels, so they would have to do a consolidation plan.
So so they would keep the exterior lot lines and all the interior lot lines would
Go away, yeah.
I would certainly clean the title up too as it goes forward.
And it is proposed for condominium type of concept, correct?
Yes.
So not individual parcels or lots, each building, each building, I'm assuming would be its own
That's correct, and
condominium.
the intention is to rent.
But it's gonna be they're gonna be condos.
They're not for sale.
That doesn't, condo has to do with the form of ownership, they're condos. Yeah,
They're gonna be multifamily, they're townhouse, but they're 202s. They'll be owned by one entity, which will rent them, and they can be condos.
Mr. Bowersox, you know what I'm getting at. Condo has to do with the form of ownership. Is this gonna be condos or is it gonna be a multifamily building? So those are two different things from an ownership standpoint.
So I believe they are gonna be rentals. I'm not clear on if it's gonna be a condominium cooperative or just a straight apartment building kind of
Okay,
thing.
because you understand what I'm saying. A condo doesn't mean whether it's owned or rental.
No,
A condo
I
is a form of
understand.
ownership. And that's what I'm saying here is
It's
is
not
that was a
big.
question, is this a condo building? Or is it a, like a apartment building?
Mr. Hoffman, just so we know though, each building has 6 units in it, so if we ever condoed it, it would have 6 condo units. And you would sell them individually. In this case, all the buildings will be owned by the same entity. And if they do decide to do a condominium regime later, they'll be constructed to that standard, so they could do that in the future. That's the way it's set up.
So in this, as for clarification, I think in this case, what's being proposed are 202 townhouse type structures. 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yes.
5, 6, 7 buildings on a parcel. In the future, if you'd have to do a condominium plat to create that. That's not being planned today.
That's
Being
correct.
proposed. It'll be one parcel with 7 buildings on it.
Thank
And
you.
no
That's what I'm
condominium.
trying to get at. You're
Yeah.
not, because some people would go ahead. And I'm not telling you what to do. Some people would go ahead and condo it now. Because going back later and condoing it after it's already built can be problematic at times. And not to go down a rabbit hole here, but that's what I was trying to get clarity on. So these are gonna be, buildings, basically, similar to an apartment building.
Yeah, exactly.
It is. It's similar to an apartment building. It's just 2 over 2.
The only difference between it's not considered a multifamily structure because it doesn't have just a single access. Like a normal apartment.
I understand from a code standpoint, but I'm just saying, like, it's not,
If you condo it,
yes.
then what happens is you get 40 individual tax bills.
I'm well aware. I have an
Right.
apartment building that has
Yes.
a 20, that is actually a 20 unit condo.
So.
Yeah.
But it could happen in the future, but it's not being proposed now.
No, I just want to clarify what your intent was, because when you're building it like this, that means that it's very likely to stay a rental property, because you're never gonna, the only way you're gonna sell them as individual units is if you do a condo.
Correct, right.
And
So,
that's the idea from the developer is these are to be rental units. There have been discussions, very preliminary discussions with one or more potential ultimate purchasers for this project. And we're not sure which direction they're gonna wanna go in, except these are gonna be rentals. They're not proposing to do individual condos or co-ops for that matter and sell them out individually, subject to an association.
Are they gonna be market rate?
Yes.
I believe so,
Market rate,
yes.
That's correct.
Any?
Could you just review the parking again? I thought I heard him say 5 spots per unit?
5 per building.
But
The 5 per building.
okay.
Yes,
Okay,
and then-
I was just
and then,
saying,
of course,
then he said there was only 100 spots.
It's
and I-
2.5 per dwelling unit, so 2.5 times 40. So
Okay.
each stick, and then talk about the stick again, if you view it as almost a townhouse with 2
Yeah,
dwelling
5
units
per
in it.
building. It's like,
Each build, yeah, so
And all of these homes, units have a garage.
Correct.
So does the garage count as one of the parking spaces?
yes.
yes.
Okay, so the garage counts as one of the parking space and then,
Okay.
okay,
So each dwelling unit in that stick will have its own individual parking space. You park and you have to go up 2 flights of stairs to get to your upper unit, or you park, you go immediately into the first floor unit.
because so for each stick, there is a garage for a 1-car garage for each.
Yes,
That's
you can see by this elevation here. So essentially, this one might serve the first 2 floors, this one would serve the top floors. And so forth as you go down. So every dwelling unit has its own garage space.
So is the bottom?
So there's 40 garage spots
Yes.
and then you're getting how many spots otherwise? Because you said you're a total of 80.
No, but they're proposing or providing 100.
100. So then 60 of the spots are open spots. Because 40 are in garages, because there's 40 units, so each one has its one garage. And then there's 60 spots throughout the development.
And the spots could be outside the garage, or they could be in parking spaces, or they could be parallel parking.
Because it looks like you have parallel parking along, along the road.
Correct.
Yes. And then you have different parking lots, I see. Okay,
So essentially you have 2 parking spaces per unit with 20 left over for visitors.
Correct. And actually, I believe we
It's
have
actually
more.
2.5 per dwelling unit, hence the 5. So 2.5 per
Right.
dwelling unit because of the number of bedrooms that are proposed. I believe it's 200. So then that gets you to the 5 times 40 being 80 required for development. So essentially they have 20. But that, even the 2.5 per dwelling unit assumes overflow, that it's just not necessarily solely for the building itself. Parking calculations assume there's gonna be some visitor parking. It's even part of that 2.5% or 2.5 parking space that are required.
so Mr. Debo, just to be clear, so I understand. So this, which I consider the driveway, is that considered a parking spot or? No.
Only if it was 9 by 18, which I do not believe it's gonna be
Okay.
that big of a space.
So the 60 spots are here, and along the street?
We can go through and tally that up.
Okay.
We can, in front of those garages, there's basically 18 feet.
Okay, so if the space is available for it, that's potential to pick up.
Yes.
Okay, so, but in theory, then that means you're parking somebody in, but you're parking somebody in that is also living in your unit.
Living in a unit, yes.
I understand.
Hopefully you pick the right one.
Yeah, well, yes, well, whatever.
Does that mean that the unit that are the upper 2 floors have a little more square footage then, or an extra
Yes.
bedroom or something?
Yes.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, the first floor assumes the parking space square footage for the unit above. So yes, you lose
Your
some
bigger
square
units on
footage in the first
top,
floor, yeah.
So is it 1 and 2 bedroom? Is that the difference? The ground floor 1, second floor 2?
I think they're all 2. But it could, it
Or it
might,
might be more.
Like
Right.
Square footage.
Yeah,
Yeah, because these, none of these were gonna be one bedroom, if I remember correctly.
no, I thought they were all two.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure they were gonna be three.
Okay,
That's what we assumed
okay.
at this point.
Alright.
But again, as we go through the process and we fine tune the architecture and then have to adjust the parking lot accordingly. If they're one bedrooms, that parking calculation actually drops.
But it wouldn't matter whether it's 2 or 3 or even 4 bedrooms, it would still be the same requirement for parking spaces,
2.5.
2.5 for dwelling unit, yeah.
So they're required to have 100 altogether.
80. Oh, no,
You said 2.5 for
2.5.
dwelling unit. Yeah.
yeah,
I was like,
100, yes, thank you. My math is.
I was good at math.
2 plus
Plus 20.
20 gets you
Is 100.
80 and 20.
So yes,
Yes,
100.
okay.
All right, any further questions here?
I just some clarifications. So 20% is the open space requirement. The actual requirement is that the 20% of open space is to be dedicated to the city. Depending whether the planning commission believes the dedication should be city-owned park land. Talking to the director of Rexham Park, none of the space creates an area that would be accessible or large enough for a city-wide park. So the recommendation would be that instead of accepting the open space for city ownership, there's a fee in lieu of option that the developer will be subject to pay the fee in lieu of in place of the dedication of open space. It doesn't reduce the 20% they're required to provide, or even the 50% of that.
But they have to maintain,
But they have-
obviously,
they would
they
have to they'd have to maintain the open space, and they own the open space, and the city would just collect a fee in lieu that we would use
towards,
other park type of services.
because the reality is this open space here is gonna be used by mainly this community.
Yes.
This wouldn't make any sense for the city to own it.
No, it would not.
This is not wouldn't be a good decision.
No, it would not. It just accessibility, even if we were to take a portion of it, you still have to provide. We would have to provide or take over the roadway. We'd have to provide individual parking for those units or that open space. So you're correct. It doesn't really go too well.
Are these public streets through all here?
That was gonna be my next question.
And private?
So they're all private, so the city would not be taking any responsibility of maintaining or ownership of the roadways.
It's all gonna be private. Okay, that was my other question.
And then the other one for clarification, there's a 100-foot setback requirement from any proposed buildings to existing buildings. And I believe it meets those standards. I just want the applicant to confirm that.
Is that 100 feet between buildings or property line?
It's the building itself.
Building, okay.
All right. We're gonna, I'll confirm that, but I think we're right there.
And that's all I had, the question about the roadway as well.
I mean, the nice color drawing's nice because it kind of lets you be able to see things better. So I appreciate that.
So this would be managed just like a typical apartment complex.
That's
When you
correct.
leave the public street, from there it's private.
Correct.
Private streets, private street lights, private trash collection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah, because you're gonna have to find a spot for your dumpster as well.
And a lot of these details are typically, as you know, site plan
Sure.
related
Absolutely.
details, which you will continue to be seeing, you know, in the, further development,
Correct.
literally, of the project.
We're just, Mr. Brett, we're just trying to kind of get a sense of things, because to be honest, most of us have not, at least in my time, I have not been through this
Yeah.
process of pulling down the PD9 onto a property, so it's a little bit of a newer
Yeah.
process for us.
Yeah, I understand that. It's because it is, as I mentioned before, kind of a hybrid. It's easy to blur blind sometimes. And
Because we're used to looking at site plans and getting, and you're correct. This is
Some
more
jurisdictions-
conceptual.
Some jurisdictions, not this one, tend to blur those distinctions, pretty
Yes.
regularly.
Well, when I was working for the city way back, the very first project that was a PD9 was Pars Ridge. And the
Yeah,
only difference between Pars Ridge and this is that Pars Ridge is condoized. But as far as the theory of ownership and buildings, it's all the same.
exactly.
So it's interesting.
And just for the, go back to the trash removal. From my experience and knowing the product in other locations, the trash cans typically kept in the garage area and trash services behind the buildings, not into a dumpster. So one of the elements, if that's the case, and this will come up with the site plan review, we would ensure that these access drives behind the buildings would be designed sufficiently that a vehicle, the trash truck can get through. But again,
That's not the city doing.
no, this is all
That
private,
is,
this is all private, but we
correct.
still want to ensure that we still look at the radius and the turn and
just-
movement and everything else. But yeah, so it will not be the city, it's privately, trash private,
It-
snow removal private, landscaping, maintaining private. Yes,
But you're right, you would do the service that.
Yeah.
Just, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Anything further?
No, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Barsloff, do you have anything further?
No, unless there's questions, that I can answer,
Any questions from staff or commission members?
Not at the moment.
Okay,
And Mr. Hackett did clarify, the architecturals are forthcoming. Because we remember, there was a discussion on the 29th of August about the monotonous facade of the rears. And, so we just, Mr. Poss, unfortunately is laid up. Or he may have a better answer for you with that more current information about the condo question you had. But he is arranging to get those architecturals showing the carriage of some of those front materials around the sides and the back. Break up that monotony.
And that's fine, because part of the exercise of tonight is be able to get whatever public feedback on what is, what's out here so far. Because, I'm obviously, and it's up to the whole planning commission, but, I think, we'll probably have another work session, or two on this as we get the architectures before we send it on to the mayor and common council, because I think the planning commission desire is to have everything pretty solid here. So that when it goes to the mayor and common council, it's not, they don't necessarily want to get into the weeds like we're getting into the weeds. So,
And to Mr. Baird's point, these floating zones, the PD9s, PD4s, they just don't come up that often. So.
we have two right now, which is interesting. So could be more. So,
Sorry. If there's no questions, I think I'll. Back to you.
okay. Okay, on the sign-in sheet, the first name is Charles Shipley. Sir, if you could come up and any comment you want to make, this is your time to do
I
that.
want to thank you all, and Mr. Decko, I think, is that happening? I want to thank you. I emailed you and you responded to me right away, so I want to thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Actually, and I've heard him say it 3
Mr.
times.
Shipley, where do you live?
Oh, I live on 30
Thirty
Sullivan.
Sullivan.
30 Sullivan?
So I live right on Sullivan, right. My house is actually right at the back corner.
Where is it? Can you, if you don't mind pointing it out, it'd be nice. That's a reference point, because then I know where you are.
Right here.
Okay, you're right there. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've heard, say a few times about the architecturals aren't quite finalized. I realize this is a concept plan and whatnot, but one thing concerns me is the height. From what I've seen from some of these renderings, they're 4.5+ stories high. If I'm sitting out in my backyard, I'm literally gonna be looking at a wall. These things gonna be tall. That, and then just, that was one thing, and also along the back line. So if you do anything with us, it looks like I'll be bordering this stormwater management area. Are you gonna be planning on putting any kind of trees or planting around, just so maybe it won't be, kind I don't want to use the word.
I think they're
still want-
showing trees
Yeah.
on that.
What type of trees? In other words, are they just going to be something that's going to take 20 years to grow? And by that time I'll be in the nursing home, but not know my thumb. Or is it, or is it something that's going to be, pretty quick, to kind of block, I don't want to say we're just so used to seeing natural green back there, and now it's going to be gone.
The landscape manual, it's not, obviously, it's not gonna be a mature tree when it has to go in.
Right.
I think it's a certain diameter of the tree itself. You might get a pine tree, you might see
Because I know
maybe
along with
6
the stormwater
feet.
management, you also gotta
Yeah.
be careful what you grow, because you don't wanna hamper the soil there for the ponds, because then you can.
Exactly, you can't build within the stormwater management
Right.
facility area itself. So no, you're correct. I think initially when it goes through, you're probably looking at anywhere between a 10 to 15 foot tall tree,
Okay.
maybe a 6 foot tall pine tree.
Well, 6 foot, I got a 6 foot vinyl fence, and I got a picture, when I saw my deck, I'm already looking over
Yeah,
the fence, because the way the ground slopes. Another thing too is, I think it's called North Road, the access road coming out onto Sullivan. Now, right, now, I realize the rest of it's gonna be private, but if that's gonna be public, isn't that gonna be maintained by the taxpayers?
this is currently public.
Right,
So
but
not-
it's not really improved, I mean, it's there, people use it as a driveway, but it's not improved. It's not like. It's a certain driveway, right, exactly.
Yeah, we'll maintain, ultimately, the city would maintain the roadway within the city, at the city's right of way, but anything, this portion extending into the property, we would not. So the ownership of this roadway isn't changing, we're just requesting and asking that be improved on. To provide a sufficient surface and material to carry traffic.
And where would the utilities be coming in at? Any idea on that one?
The what?
The utilities.
You know where the water sewer lines are?
I don't know.
We do, there's adequate water and sewer for the project.
I know there's a
How
sewer
would
line
you
going down
compare?
Sullivan and water going down Sullivan. I was
We
just
could-
curious as far as.
My guess it's in Pennsylvania Avenue or on Route 140. But we can find that out.
Okay. Right. And then just being here tonight, I found out that these are gonna be rentals. And what's that gonna do with our property tax? Because a lot of times when you say you live near rentals, it just seems like everybody just frowns upon it. And I realize these are gonna be new and they're gonna be shiny and whatnot, but over time, rentals always seem to go downhill rather than uphill.
I can't speak to property taxes, that's just a matter of economy, but the products that we see, if you go to Frederick, Leesburg, other areas, you see these, they are not declining. We're seeing the rates for market rate apartments and properties in the city increasing actually.
Okay, well,
There's actually a
well,
lack
there you
of-
go, then there's another, because if it increases, they're gonna reassess our property, then our property tax then goes up. So one way or the other, it's either gonna go up or down.
My understanding, property tax is for your property, not for the adjacent parcel.
Well,
Again,
but
I'm
they
not,
assess the whole area,
different product, different zoning district,
and
different.
what, exactly, what was the existing zoning for this?
R75.
Okay, what does that mean as far as, what would that be allowed under that existing condition? What does that allow?
Single family housing, hold on, I don't wanna get this
I think
incorrect.
it's
R
duplexes,
75, yeah, you could do
Yeah.
duplexes.
7,500 square
I think
foot lot.
semi-detached.
So that would allow you what? 6 lots, this was kind of what I was thinking, so you're going from.
No, it would be a lot more lots
It's
than,
4 acres,
yes, 4 acres.
so it's.
Very
Is it 4 acres?
4.75, yeah, from what I've seen on the,
It's.
4.75?
yeah, that's what I've seen on
I would say it was around 19 units, if it was.
So you're
Single family, kind of conventional cookie cutter.
That's 27, if in theory, 27 technical units. Your 4.75 times 43,560 divided by 7,500 is 27.588 units, technically.
There goes my math again.
So 12,
Yes.
so for 12, so you're only saying 12 more units difference. Why don't they just do, I ain't saying not to develop, so what that property, sure, but let's put something that's gonna be more feasible. I mean, for the overall area as well. I mean, you got single family homes. I mean, you got a little bit of commercial in one corner, but for the most part, it's surrounded by single family homes. So, you know, I'd say, you know, something similar to that would be suffice.
I have a question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
In the R 7500, does that allow duplex in that
Yes.
one lot?
Yes, it does, allows single family detached.
So you're
and
talking 20
duplexes.
lots, 10 acres. So
It's,
there you could have
the
40,
yield is 27 if we're looking at.
so 27 lots.
lots, correct, yeah,
27 lots, but it could be
correct, it could be
Right.
more units, you're right.
units.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they won't be, you know, 4 stories high.
So we probably should continue on having a back, and if you have any other comments, we're certainly gonna consider your comments, but we can't have a endless
Sure.
back and forth here, it's not a debate.
No,
Was there any other comments that you had?
I'm sure if I sit here and think, I probably can come up with them, but right now, I'm gonna say no, sir.
And you will have more opportunity,
We'll keep the record open too.
Yeah.
We'll have an
and
opportunity.
you can submit a letter,
Right, right. And again, I want to thank this gentleman here for getting back to me quickly. I was provided that work, emailed it, and 5 minutes, I checked later, like, I was like, you must not have much to do.
I wish that was the case.
Yeah,
I don't want that on the record.
When you're talking about, the lots and how many lots you can get, that's theoretically how many you can get. But because of the property and how it lays out, you may not be able to technically
sure.
get that many after you do the engineering. So it's, that would take a lot more work to do that. All right, next on the list is Mike Lane from 28 Sullivan Avenue.
I live
yeah, show us,
Right.
right here.
if you could show us up here, that'd be great. Just 'cause we can see it.
Right here, right there.
Okay, thank you.
So, how many of you guys have actually gone back to visit this spot?
I'm familiar with it.
And,
Sorry, name.
Mike Lane, 28 Sullivan Avenue. So the pictures all look good. And thing about 4-story buildings, I understand. The target here for the rentals, probably college kids, makes a lot of sense, I understand that. But from what I'm seeing, like the open space and all, when you go back there, cause I walk it every day, it does not look like it's all gonna fit in there. And like what he was saying, it's surrounded by single family homes, so how do we know that this developer isn't gonna start acquiring more additional properties and start surrounding us in and decreasing our value of our property in hopes that he could future, buy our house? Because I know right up here where you guys are talking about Habitat for Humanity, just did a hell of a job on that house. And now that woman is gonna have to live next to a big condominium, and how do we get assurances that you guys aren't gonna allow the developer to kind of cookie cutter this to where all of a sudden, we're either left with the option of we sell for less or we stay, I don't want to get stuck in a situation where I have this huge condominium complex being built around my house. Because right now it's really not, Mr. Dickey's right there. He's the one that is across the street from Habitat for Humanity. It looks great on paper, but I live there. I know that there's 2 buildings right there. They're gonna be gigantic. So everybody on Sullivan Avenue is gonna have a 4-story building behind them. And then you're talking about dog parks and open space and all. I just don't see it. Because when I look out my back door, I can see this hill right here, which is 140. It's not that far away. So that means that everybody on Sullivan Avenue is gonna see every single building in that. And I understand once you go up to you change the zoning, it allows for bigger, better houses, I guess.
It allows for more density.
Yeah, more density. But that property to me doesn't really fit what they're proposing. I understand you buy property, you want to develop it. But like they're kind of trying to jam it. I understand you're talking about Leesburg and Frederick. I work all over. I've been in a bunch of places like this. It makes sense where you're literally talking about jamming a big condominium complex in the backyard of a bunch of people's homes because it's vacant property. Like, why can't the city have more restrictions on what the developer can do? I'm fine with the developer buying the property, doing whatever he wants. But it just seems that it shouldn't come at the down cost of the people that have already bought the house. You know, we've lived there, what, 10, 15 years? We were hoping to sell this year. And now it's like, what are we gonna do, you know? I mean, the developer can buy me out, there's another one. But what I'm saying is the people that are gonna get stuck there are gonna be stuck looking at 4-story buildings. You're talking about, I don't know how many different cars. That road you all are talking about improving up until about where that right here, where the business is stone, the rest is gravel. So is the taxpayer gonna pay that? It just doesn't make sense to me to take a vacant area or surrounded by single family homes and smash a condominium. You know, and it's that type of developing that this makes no sense to me. Like, I do not understand why the city would okay 4 stories tall buildings behind a bunch of houses. You know, if the developer has a plan to buy out that whole area, makes sense. But you're stuck with a bunch of single family homes. And look what our backyard's gonna be, you know? And then in the future, let's just say they build it, the college kids move in, they're making money, and I understand that. But what do we do when we go to sell our house? Because our property value is gonna go down. So we're suffering at the cost of the city saying, yeah, we allowed them to, you know? So if it stayed the same code, it seems to me it wouldn't be 4-story tall buildings. It wouldn't be, because that dog park they're talking about, what is that, like a 15 wide dog park? Because I know it's not gonna be no 100-yard dog park walk, you know? I walk back there every day. It just, to me, it looks nice. They did a good job putting pictures on there so people look at it and say, wow, look at this. But when you stand at that actual property, it just, it's gonna be congested. Like, you're talking about street parking. I don't even know how, like, I don't understand how they're gonna build the roads and the buildings and all back there and have space. Because the property, the way it's like cookie cuttered out, it's not a big square cookie cutter, I mean, big slides. And it's on a hill, the grades, it's like, how are they gonna fit all that in? Get all the promised stuff that you guys are, you know, and then how do we know that we're not gonna be looking at some ugly buildings? You know, do we have any say in what the final product is? And then the stormwater management, like, what are they, the open ponds? Or is it gonna be, you know, the type of stormwater management where it's underground and you don't see it? Like, what, you know, because then you know, the people backing up to that won't even be able to sit on their deck, because what does stormwater management bring? With a bunch of insects. So just living there, you know, looking out my back door a lot, I know that this looks good on paper. I just don't see it. And I think it's.
Hey, in the back, if you don't mind keeping it down, because I can't hear, I can't hear what he's saying.
You know, it'd be nice if the developer and these guys would get with us and kind of walk the property and be like, this is what we're talking. Because right now, looking at this, it really don't make sense to me. But if you all would be willing to meet us there, you know, especially, you know, I feel real bad for the woman that just got the house from Habitat from Humanity. You know, they did a hell of a lot of work on the house. And she's literally right now gonna have to make the decision to allow a bunch of traffic by her house or live next to a big condominium, you know, so there's a lot of impact going on here. The other thing is the gas station. You know, that road right there, the main road, yeah, it comes in on Pennsylvania Avenue, but I guarantee you more people are gonna come out that side street. Because why? You can come right down there, turn left on Sullivan, you go right to the red light at 140. You know, that's not, the main exit may be called the main exit, but it ain't gonna be the main exit. So how do we know that Sullivan Avenue isn't gonna be, it's already a pretty dangerous road, people fly down there. But how do we know that that's not gonna all of a sudden become the most used avenue, you know what I'm saying? So I understand people buy land, the idea is to develop it. I think it'd be nice for you guys or the developer or something, at least come knock on our doors, show us how it's gonna be, walk it with us and explain to us what you're trying. You know, because I really do not want to look at a 4-story rental building. You know, if it was 2 stories, whatever, if it was single houses, whatever, but looking, you know, like he said, sitting on our back deck, we're gonna be looking at condominiums. And I can't really think of another place in Westminster that you all allowed 4-story buildings behind single family homes. I might be wrong, but I've never seen this before, you know? So I would hope that you guys take into account the people that are gonna live around this and not just think, oh, it's gonna be great, you know, we're getting some dog parks, so we're gonna get a lot of, you know, college, like I would hope it's college kids living there. It makes sense to me, but this, you know, I just feel like we have not been kept into the loop at all, and now we're kind of being told it's our option. So it'd be nice to like have at least 1 or 2 representatives have another meeting with us. You know, I'm sure the guys that live next to me, everybody on the, just come out and kind of walk it with us. Explain to us how you're gonna fit 7 buildings, 4-story built, tall, with all those roads, all those parking spots on that. Because I've walked around multiple times back there, it does not seem that big to me. So I think it's gonna be like jam-packed, tight, and it looks great on paper. But, you know, like how much space is in between those 2 buildings? What, 15 feet? You know, I don't see it because you're talking, my house and his house are right next to each other, and you're saying that there's gonna be a whole building right behind his house and then a whole nother building like 2 houses up. So it just does not make sense the way you have it laid out. And I'm really concerned that that side street is gonna become a main thoroughfare, which is gonna make Sullivan Avenue even more terrible getting out of our houses. But, you know, other than that, I'm open to, you know, whatever you guys wanna do. I just do not wanna suffer the consequences of you guys letting a developer add more people into the area. You know. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is Adam Walker, 20 Sullivan Avenue.
Adam Walker, 20 Sullivan Avenue. I live at the Habitat house that he was just talking about right here on the corner. Right? This little spot right here is all grass. That's our front yard right now. Are they proposing to make that some kind of parking pad for us? Because right now, what is drawn in as a driveway is really my front yard. That's green grass, right up to the front of the house. It also connects to Dick's driveway that's here, but that's not gravel, that is grass. Is that drawn in correctly? Are they gonna provide that?
They would have to work, they would have to work with you. They don't have the authority to come on the property to do work.
Correct. Again, which is why I'm asking why it's gray instead of green. Everything else on there is green, it's supposed to be grass.
It wouldn't authorize them to do it.
Again,
They would have to have your approval to do any work on your property.
which is why I'm asking
Yeah,
why it's
we don't,
gray
have-
instead of
we
green.
wouldn't have the authority.
That's all.
I'm guessing they were just showing,
What they may or may not do.
potentially, no, working with you. That if you wanted that access, if you wanted parking, I think that's what they're looking at doing, that my guess is they would have to talk to you, well, they have to talk to you to do any work.
Sir, I think the green reflects the property that's under their ownership or proposed ownership.
He's talking about this.
I think that's correct. I don't-
I'm talking about why that section there is gray.
Why
It
this
should
little,
be,
why this little gray
like,
box.
see how this over here, that is not their property, is still green? You can see that that's green. Right? It's dead green,
No,
but it's green, same as down there. That's the only part that's outside of their line that's a different color, and I'm asking why.
And it can't be, we can ensure
Well, is
that that's not.
I pulled up my property lines before I came out to make sure that that was exactly what it was supposed to be. And that is our front yard. That's my question.
Can I say one more thing real quick? The way that this property line is right here. Dickie doesn't even own his driveway no more. Is that what you guys were saying?
Yeah. Same as us. We don't own our driveway anymore
Yeah,
either.
because this road comes up and then there's like field right here and that's where they go in, that's where, so.
That's a survey, you know, I mean, when you do the survey for the property, that's all has to get figured out who owns what.
And that's,
But bottom line is they can't do any work on your property unless you allow them to do it.
Right.
and again,
This is showing that they don't know where the property is. This is inaccurate. That's what I'm saying. So I'm confused why it's up here to show.
So one at a time. So you have the floor.
we live in the
right
same.
now. Okay, I
we
know.
live in the same house.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
That's all.
So,
Again, I agree with them, like, I live on that corner. That road is gonna be, I just told her, I was like, if I lived in that neighborhood and I was trying to get on 140 to go the other direction, I'm coming straight down Sullivan Avenue, making a left-hand turn, and get right on 140. I'm coming straight down that road. No questions asked. It's easier than getting on Pennsylvania Avenue, going down, getting onto the on-ramp, coming up and around. It's just easier. It's faster. That's the way I would go. I know that, I mean, you're talking about 2x2s and that amount of area. I counted the parking spaces that they have up there on the left-hand side. Counts as 22 plus the 40 driveway or plus the 40 garages is only 64. And you're not getting enough parallel parking in there to get to your 100. Unless you're counting the spaces in front of their houses, the extra parking, which I think is horse, if you ask me. But again, for jamming all this into this little tiny area, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, except for from the dollar portion. So it's my only thing.
Okay. Sir, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I thought of one more quick thing real quick. So this main entrance right here. You're coming off 140, this is a 2-lane road, right? So how are you gonna account for the traffic coming in and out of there already with the high volume of traffic coming in and out of off of 140 right there? It's gonna cause a lot of congestion and problems are, I mean, there's accidents there all the time, you know, so because that merge lane ends real abruptly, and then you're gonna have cars come, so now you're gonna have cars trying to take a left-hand turn in there. So that's why all of a sudden Sullivan Avenue and that main road is gonna become the main entrance in and out of there. It's inevitable, you know, they can do all the signage and everything they want there, that side road is going to become the main road in and out.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Any comments from the commission at this point?
Is that all that was on the list?
Yeah, that's all we have, yeah.
Can I say, can I put my name out into that, please?
Sure. And your name is,
My
ma'am?
name is Patricia Spencer.
Patricia Spencer?
Yes.
Can you tell us where you live?
I don't. I
Sorry?
can show you what's mine now. Yes. Right here.
That's your property?
That's, yeah, it's raw land.
Okay.
So I have no access to my property at this point in time. I've tried to sell this, it will not sell. And I have a feeling it's because of all these plans that are going on. Because this isn't the first time this has been attempted. So on top of that, coming down from Hanover,
You said it's a raw piece of land.
yes, right there,
You mean that strip right there?
right here, this is my uncle's home.
Uh-huh.
My uncle's 85 years old. You put these in here, there becomes a safety issue. Because I've been a landlord and I can tell you,
I just want to be clear, because I'm trying to understand where your piece is.
right here,
Okay, first, so you are this strip of land right here.
correct,
You do not go all the way out?
nope.
Okay, so you own this block right here.
It's
Okay,
928 Sullivan Avenue.
okay.
So I can assure you that someone that rents a property doesn't care about that property as I care about my own home, and probably these people care about their own home. And out of all of you, only one of you walked back in there. And I can tell you, this road looks real impressive from this picture. It is not. It is not at all. We
So
agree?
one car can go down. it.
Thank you. So, and like I say, I come down from Hanover and I come down, as a matter of fact, Habitat was where my grandmother and my aunt lived and my grandparents. This other house was my grandparents' is gonna be torn down, which needs to be torn down. But it is a safety issue. If you're gonna put 100 more cars in here and you're providing 100 parking spaces, there is just no way that this area can absorb that. There's just no way. I almost got hit coming onto Pennsylvania Avenue twice on my way down here. And I come down around 5:30. That is like insane out there where that new gas station is. It is, and by the airport, it's unsafe as it is. And then you're gonna put 100 more cars in and out of there. And on top of that, I am concerned for the safety of my uncle. He's 85 years old. He has lived there. My aunt, and as a matter of fact, most of this was occupied by my family at one point in time. And he's still there and he wants to stay there. But you have how many new buildings in there? How many new? I mean, it's, the renters, as a landlord, I can tell you, renters do not care the same as property owners do. And they will not take care of their property like we take care of ours. And it is a safety issue for those. And it's unfair that I want to sell my property and I can't. This is my second attempt and no one will buy because they are aware of what's going on. And I think that's unfair to us and anybody else out here who wants to sell at one point at any time. It's not right. So I assume you're going to generate a lot of income off of this whole deal. And I'm sure that's what it's about. But this area has pretty much been the way it has for a long, long time. So, I get that there's other properties, these other rentals. At one point in time, there was an absolute drug issue in this area that was horrifying, because I know this area since I was a child. I rode horses back in here, so I can tell you. This, it was a safety issue. Back then, the drugs have been pretty rampant and sometimes in that area. So I don't know what we're going to gain from all of this. I can't see where there's a positive to add that much more property in there, especially as rentals. If you want to sell them as homes, that's one thing, but not as rentals. It's not safe for everybody that's there. No, that's my thought.
All right.
My wife would also, she's more educated.
Well, we're not
better.
really into the questions, but we're into the public comment. If you'd like to speak, sure.
Yes, I would like to.
Okay, feel free to. Your name is?
My name is Leanne Lane, and I live at 28 Sullivan Avenue,
How do you spell that?
Leann.
28. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, go ahead, man.
So I did want to clarify one thing that was mentioned about future meetings not being open to the public. Can you clarify what that means? Because I believe you said that you received the information this morning. These pictures are at least 3 years old, and we were just notified last week. So we haven't really had time to digest this and voice concerns.
The public hearings, that's where the public has the ability to speak and provide their concerns to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They can offer to keep the record open beyond tonight to allow for additional public comment to be provided. But once the public record is closed, the public hearing portion then stops. If it does come back to for a work session, essentially it's at the Planning Commission's determination as to whether they want to take additional comment. Staff would recommend not to because the record would be otherwise closed. But then it would come back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for discussion and potential recommendation.
So, but understand, just to be clear, I'm sorry.
Here's a dual process. The Planning and Zoning Commission conducts its business like we're doing. This is the first step. And then we make a recommendation. I don't know what that will be. It could be positive, it could be not. And then it goes to the mayor and council, who has an identical kind of process where they have a public hearing open, just like you're here tonight. You could go there and speak. So it's not something that's going to happen very quickly. It takes time because you have these different bodies that have to act at each level. So this is our first hearing on this matter tonight.
So it'll what be,
I wanted to add just one point of clarification. All of the planning commission's meetings are open to the public, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you can testify at every one of their meetings, and you can come and observe. It's like the public hearing processes where they are seeking the public input.
Okay, and can you confirm if we wanted to submit certain concerns in writing that do we have a specified amount of time after
Yes.
this evening?
We're gonna
we'll announce that tonight.
we're gonna get to that, but my feeling is that we should keep the record open at least till the end of October.
That's fair.
And then, we'll close the record October 31st. That's what I'm gonna recommend, but
We have to take official
yeah,
action.
that's what I think is fair.
But
I just
just,
want to clarify that this wasn't once and done.
No, no, no.
and one other point of clarification, just so everybody understands, because for us, we're on planning and zoning, so we kind of understand the process better. But as I was saying, this is sort of like a concept plan right now. It hasn't even made it out of this level yet. It has to go to the mayor and common council. There will be an opportunity for public input then. But even if the mayor and common council recommend to move forward with the concept plan, eventually there will be a site plan, which will be much more detailed and much more specific. And that still has to come back here, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Depot.
Yes.
And so there's that other layer yet again, further down the road. And that's where you get into some of the really technical issues of there being, traffic studies required and knowing exactly what the grade is and knowing how certain of the issues as far as like what kind of trees are definitely would be going in, because all of that will be reflected on the site plan. And that you also have the opportunity, if it ever gets there, to comment on that as well. Okay,
Okay,
so there's multiple levels of public comment here.
excellent. The next question I had or concern I really have is regarding the trees, understanding that they're not going to be at full maturity when planted behind the dwellings. And there was mention that the trash will be behind the dwellings. I currently live directly across from the other apartments on Sullivan Avenue. And I've had to call the owner of that establishment multiple times because there's no barrier to protect the trash from their dumpster from blowing. Understand things happen, but my entire yard, it can be filled with trash at times. There's nobody there to clean it up but us. Secondly, we've had problems with the apartment complex across the street on Sullivan with their plow trucks damaging our property. So I do have concerns that if there is a roadway behind the latter segment of the homes, what protections we would have if there's damage to our property behind there. Because currently, the private owners of the apartments do nothing for us. And that did include my mailbox, so I would think there would be some accountability there, but there was not. And the major thing I want to bring to the attention of the committee, I want to point it out here, because I don't know if you're aware, but right here where our home, this is Crossroads Church. This is also a school bus stop. I don't know if you're aware, but last year we had to call the county to come out, which ended up being a call to the city to patrol this area. And we had officers sitting here and here at this entryway every day before and after school. They would be there for, 10 minutes and give multiple tickets because of the amount of traffic and failure to obey the speed limit down there. And I would imagine 100 more cars is just going to generate a larger problem for those kids at that bus stop. And that was my concern. So thank you for letting me share.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, anybody else want to be heard? All right, so any comments from the commission members at this point?
Well, I definitely think we should keep
Definitely.
I think we need to take a motion
My recommendation is that we close the hearing and keep the public record open to the end of October 31st.
Yes.
So any written comments you want to make, you'll have literally 2 weeks to do that. So that's my proposal.
I will make a motion that we close the public hearing, but keep the opportunity for written comments open till 5 o'clock on October 31st, Mr. Depot? Yep. 4:30.
Second.
4:30 on October 31st.
A motion been made and seconded to close the public hearing and keep the record open to receive written comments until October 31st at 4:30. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries.
And Mr. Depot, those comments can be submitted to you, I guess, or how, or
I'll just submit it to, you can go online and it's planning@westminstermp.gov, or you can provide them directly to 45 West Main Street, which is our offices, and direct them to planning department.
just so everybody in the audience knows if they want to submit something in writing. Okay.
Okay, folks, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay,
Let me take a little
Yeah, we can
break
take
in
a break.
between the two
That's
items.
that's fine. So we'll take a 5-minute break.
5 minute break.
meeting and move into the next item. This is a discussion on the local map amendment for the compatible neighborhood zone at the 222 East Green Street. We had the public hearing last month and took comments. Tonight's opportunity to kind of discuss that and figure out our way forward. So any comments? I'll start with you, Mr. Huff. Anything you'd like to say?
I feel like I want to give the applicant kind of a good sense of, there was a couple things that came up with the public hearing, which is the height of the building. I'd like for us to definitely talk a little bit about that. You know, there was some debate about 3 versus 4. And then there was also, if I remember in the HDC's comments about like how far the property like kind of sits back from the roads. That's something I want to discuss, or I think we should discuss. And then the architecture, you know, there was some comment there. So I think those are the 3 things that come to my mind that I think would be helpful for us to give the applicant a better feel. And I don't know how you want to break that down, whether we want to talk. I feel like to talk about the height of the building makes the most sense first.
It seemed like the height was the major issue they had. I mean,
I'm sorry, before you get into the nitty gritty of everything you want to talk about, I just want to bring to your attention that you did receive 1 additional comment letter.
I saw
from the
that.
hearing.
Saw
And
that,
just to
yeah.
make sure everybody
Yes.
knows that it is attachment 6 in your
Yes.
packet. So just in case anybody didn't realize that, I just want to make sure that,
I'm gonna shut that door just because it's hard to. They're talking, yeah, thank you.
just so that you know, that's all. I just want to make sure that, you know, that also make sure that you had a comment, that you had a copy of the HDC letter in case
Yes.
you needed it for any type of reference, but so that's all. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
So. Mr. Chair, if it's all right with you, let's, if you're comfortable, you know, let's talk about the height of the building. Because I think we need to kind of get a consensus there. And I'm sure some of you all have ridden by that potential project as well. I understood some of the points HDC was making, but at the same token, the 4-story building in this particular location, and kind of where it sits, doesn't really bother me. I'm not that bothered by the fact, and in some ways, even if I would want some changes to the architecture, there's something, I like I guess the overall structure or vibe. It seems like if it's a 3-story, it just seems almost too stubby. And I kind of like the 4-story. And if you're standing on the street looking at where that building's gonna be, and you look at that, you know, that row of the old kind of like townhouses, the brick townhouses, the whole rear is exposed. And the side is almost all exposed. And yes, it's a pitched roof on top, but I don't know, and you guys have, maybe you have those drawings with you, but I don't know that the height of this building is gonna be that much more than what's right on the other, you know, right across the alley from it. Am I correct on that? I think you had something that showed that.
I know. You saw the 1 comment
I don't
letter.
really.
That the new one that came in actually,
I know, well, it was a nice comment letter.
Are you
Nice.
talking
it was just different. I didn't expect it.
Yes, that one, so. This is your proposed building, right? Okay, the building that's on right over here. Where is that on there?
No, that isn't defined, that isn't. It should be. Is Green Street. Right. That's what you're putting in bad, you're talking about Green Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about these buildings over here.
That is actually this building, it will be, it's just for the impact.
Yeah, no, that's not right, yeah.
And it's around, there's a second one. We are talking about the.
Is it 198?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Okay.
Green.
Okay,
So it's on.
so it is, so this 198 East East Green Street.
That's correct.
So the 4-story would be slightly, it would be higher than that.
About 5 or 6 feet maybe. That's it.
Yeah, how many feet higher is that?
It's 5 feet higher.
5 feet higher?
I think, Mr. Huff, the misnomer here is that this has a flat roof. And a lot of these buildings have pitched roofs, and they're a lot taller at the top than you would think. Now, he's got all the figures there, but
We are talking about,
Yes, I'm talking about that building right there.
I mean, what's the height of the building that's the old school?
it's.
I mean, that's a,
Oh, that's way taller.
It's right here and it's way tall.
absolutely, I mean,
It's 40 or 50 feet.
I've probably driven that street in the last month, probably at least 15 times, just as part of normal business. And I've tried to like envision this building. I've looked at the neighborhood and I don't know that
4-story just doesn't bother me.
a 4-story, absolutely, that's the point I was gonna make. It's not really something that jumps out that's suddenly gonna completely change the character of the area. It just doesn't do that.
Can you flash back and forth between the 3 and 4 on what you have on the screen?
Something also about
Yeah,
about this
That
building.
looks more boxy to me for some reason.
correct. I just visually, there's something about the 4-story, just from a visual standpoint, I like better. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What you-
Well, one thing's, like, I'm not bothered by the 4-story at all, because when you look at that whole area, across the street is basically all commercial buildings.
Yeah.
They are low. It's basically all commercial. On the east side of the building is a car lot. And that's almost all commercial down at end of Green Street.
It is, it's commercial and.
So like I say, the building sits there, yeah, there's residential behind it and residential on the other side. But this would kind of act like an anchor to that whole area, separating commercial businesses that are on Green Street with the rest of those neighborhoods that are behind it and to the side of it. So like I said, the 4 stories, and like I say, it's lower than the buildings that are, well, not all the buildings. But the old inn behind it, it's almost the same height as that, because that sits up on a hill. There's a 10, 12 feet difference between the first floor of this and the first floor of the inn. So like I said, the 4-story to me is, I just
Well,
don't.
and
see
you know,
an
the
issue.
other day, I was driving along Main Street trying to pay attention. And if you really are paying attention to the height of different buildings on Main Street, you're gonna see a lot of variation. I mean, like you have the Opera House, which is really tall. You have the old Fire Hall, that is a really tall building. And then right next door, you could have a 2-story building. So to me, like this idea that everything has to be like, the same height to keep the character of a community, I don't necessarily,
Agree with that.
I don't think I agree with it.
I think the more important thing isn't the height, the more important thing is the architectural appearance. To me, that is the issue.
Yes.
And I'm not saying I like or dislike it, but the reason those buildings fit together is that they all fit the character of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Not because one is 4 stories or 2 stories or 1 story or whatever.
So do we as a collective feel, because I think at this point, we need to give the applicant a sense of direction, and there's been this controversy between 3 and 4 stories. I feel like I'm comfortable with 4 stories.
I have no issue with it.
I have no issue with the 4 stories.
You're good, Ken?
But the caveat that we need to discuss.
Well, there's other items to
Yeah.
discuss, but but it being 4-story is not an issue.
Not an issue.
Not to put you guys under the microscope, but do you have any great consternation one way or the other?
I do not.
Okay,
I do not. I think all the points that are being made are accurate. If you look at the building behind it, the old hotel, that's essentially a 4-story building, it's 3 stories, and the pitched roof would be comparable to this, and it sits right, as you can see by this picture, sits right next to single family detached that are 2-story. We're essentially repeating what has been done, and this is set further from the residential development, and adjacent to it is a multifamily. So I don't think it's different than what we even see in this community just behind it.
just one technical question. The difference between 3 and 4 is a difference in units, but under the zone, that is not really a problem, is it?
No, it's one of the elements that you guys need to look at is the optimal density and housing types in the neighborhood to be provided. So I can go over that. So essentially what we found is a single family detached dwellings around it. You're looking at 6.7 dwelling units per acre. The adjacent multifamily is 36.29 dwelling units per acre. There's some townhouse community behind to the right, just kind of adjacent within the community. You're looking at about 15.37 dwelling units per acre. This project is proposing 33.3 dwelling units per acre. So it's less dense by unit type.
It's on the high end, but it's not the highest.
Yeah, it's not, the adjacent property is a higher
Even
density.
4 stories.
Even at 4 stories, this would be at 33.3.
Because it's a much bigger
It's a
parcel.
much bigger
Yeah,
part.
Yeah, so but the point is, the dwelling units per acre is not really any more than what some of the existing multifamily is.
Exactly, yeah, the property adjacent had the equal size lot. Again, it would still be a higher density. They could have doubled up essentially what they had there as well.
And
So,
that's even at the 4-story with the 64 units.
yeah, we're still looking at 33.3 units.
I feel very comfortable with I feel if a 4-story building means 64 units. And based upon that math that we just went over, it doesn't seem that it's out of character for the neighborhood. From a density standpoint.
So is the consensus with the commission members, 4-story?
Yes.
Yeah.
4 stories for me.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next issue. The setback issue that came up, I don't know that I even really understand what
Well,
you're talking about, so maybe somebody can explain that to me because I am stumped.
I think I know what they're getting at, and I have some
Okay.
thoughts.
So the concept is that this building should not be closer or substantially further back along the street edge as the adjacent properties, adjacent building. So that was my understanding from the Historic District Commission. You want to maintain the street edge essentially along as you're going down Strange Street.
And are they thinking it's too close now or too far away?
I think they think it's a little too close. So right here,
I wasn't sure.
I went
I
because
know, honestly, I'm not sure either. It was, their concern was maintaining the edge.
So I drove out there, it's a work session, so I'm gonna get up it. I was curious about this, and like if you measure this from the edge of the inner edge of the sidewalk. This porch kind of begins around 12 feet, and this is around 18 feet, roughly, okay, like I didn't. But roughly, it's
From-
12 to 18 feet
from the
from right here, from the edge of this sidewalk, okay? And I just kind of went out there and just kind of looked around. I feel like that building should be kind of set back similar to what this building is. Cause I kind of, and I think conceptually, if you go to the front elevation, can you go to the front elevation? This is
How
the,
much difference is that gonna make?
it is, I don't think it's that much. I think they might be close to that anyway. Cause someone just needs to check
I
that.
think they're gonna be a lot closer than you think.
Well,
The 12 feet, you mean?
no, so I think that if I was looking at this as a God view eye down on it, I think this building should be set back similar to what this building is set back. And why I say that is because I love the idea, by the way, of the individual, like these units are gonna front and you can walk right towards them. I have a friend that lives in DC that's in a similar kind of project. It just makes it more neighborhood-like to have that direct entrance into the front of the building for some of those units. But what also is nice, and I was thinking of her unit, you see it right here, you have the sidewalk, but you still have some grass there. You know what I mean? It gives some breathing room. So I do kind of feel strongly, and I would like the applicant to show us it. And I want to know that this building, the front of the building is set back similar to what's over here.
So, sir, if
Not counting the porch.
if I may, on this exhibit, that is exact survey of that building, exact survey corner. So that's the corner of the building. If I draw the straight line, I probably like 2 or 3 feet toward Green Street. That
Okay, is this, this is not, this is the porch. Where's the porch in relation to the, when you say that, you're saying it's this part, not the
Yeah,
porch.
it's the corner of the building, not a porch. Porch standing.
Okay, well,
even
let's
further.
show,
And I think you're also showing, aren't you showing a wider sidewalk than is
Yes.
typical?
Well, you have to measure from the curb.
And as you look at that, I think that's what adds some confusion. You have,
Absolutely.
If you measure from the curb
Adjacent-
face, you're good. You're-
yeah, adjacent is a smaller sidewalk. They're providing, we're asking more of an urban sidewalk. They're doing this bump out where the parking spaces, you're providing this nice element and traffic calming element. I think, and we looked at anywhere between 12 to 15 to 20 feet, we found all the single family houses, the house adjacent to it fall within that range. And my understanding, this was falling within that same range of.
well, it shows, right, this shows the foundation of that 3-story building. And it looks like it's not that far off. So how wide is this grass area then,
It's 10
sir?
feet.
This grass area is 10 feet?
We have a sidewalk 10 feet and grass area 10 feet.
See, they only have a 4-foot
Okay.
sidewalk up there, but.
Yeah, I think the wide sidewalk
It's
plays, visibly, you think it's closer where it really isn't.
I've been looking at my stuff for the last month, trying to figure that one out. And I think that's what stumped me was the wide sidewalk.
Yeah.
And why is the sidewalk so wide? It just.
You want, with the front
Public-
entrance coming out, you want more public, you want that urban type of downtown. Look, use the downtown, just walking down on Main Street as an example. You want,
So why?
yeah, you want the wider sidewalks when you start trying, especially with the density and people using it, you want a little bit wider of a
The
sidewalk.
restaurant starts seating
Yeah.
outside.
So like personally, I don't know how you guys feel. I'm not uncomfortable with this. I would not want it any closer. I.
No.
I don't want it any, you know, it looks like it's off like by a few feet. From the edge of this, and that's fine. It doesn't need to be exact. And you said it's probably about 2 feet.
2, 3 feet.
Yeah.
But
I'm comfortable with this. I certainly would not want it any closer
Closer,
to.
yeah.
Cause I like the idea, you have your wide
Sure.
sidewalk, I get you, but I like the idea of that you have a little bit of grass there and then you have those individual entrances.
Yeah.
I
I
like
mean,
that.
if you wanted them to slide back a foot, I'm sure they can slide everything.
Right.
Well, you
back.
could.
And then search it.
You might make HDC happy.
right, if you wanna match exactly corner, I can match the front of the building exactly with that existing building.
I'm not gonna affect it that much.
No,
Everything
because you
just
just
goes back.
just push everything back 2 feet.
That's correct, sir.
I don't,
If you're willing to do it and you can do it,
Might
you
make
take
it
the issue off the
yeah,
table.
Yeah,
Okay.
cause then you're saying you're matching up to the edge of the neighboring
You
building.
take the issue off the table.
Yeah.
Alright, perfect. Yeah, you
Oh,
take it
sorry.
flat off the table. All right.
And then it gives a little bit more green.
Is there a consensus on that one? I mean, it's,
Yes.
yes.
the guy's willing to do it, and it
Match
seems
it
like
up
that
with
meets
adjacent buildings.
at least one of the
To the existing building that's to the.
Take the
right.
The Humper
Right.
building,
Yeah.
Dan,
I'm sorry,
talking about the big Humper apartment units.
we're talking about matching it up to the edge of the building.
Humper's big
Yeah.
building, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, cause that will allow your big sidewalk and then you have you'll end up with 12 feet of grass. Okay.
All right, so we've got two down. Now we've got the other issue was the architectural, the appearance. And there was a lot of discussion about that. I think just to kind of open it up here for the committee members. At least my understanding is that when you do a building and try to make it fit, you don't try to copy per se other architecture, but you try to have it be compatible. And that's like me looking at a painting saying I like it, and Lynn might look at it and say she doesn't like it. It's a really hard thing to put your finger on.
Yes.
But I do think this building needs a little bit more work. I don't think how it looks meets my test, and I'm not sure I can explain it any better than that.
I'm kind of, I feel like it's in the ballpark. I feel like it's 75% there. Do you know what I mean? But I understand some of HDC's concern. But I also then don't want it to look like you're trying to put an old facade on top of a new building. So I don't know if now that you guys have a better direction, a sense of direction from us. I almost would, and it's a shame your architect is not here today. I almost would like to. You know, we've given you direction on the 4-story. We've given you direction as far as a setback, but I almost would like. If for our benefit, and maybe you can work with staff a little bit to kind of maybe come back and give us like 3 or 4 different
I was
versions.
thinking 3, but I'm with you.
It's just 3 or 4 different like kind of concepts as far as the visuals of what you could potentially do to make it, you know, more in, you know, kind of getting that combination of modern with the historic. Because it's kind of one of those things that you don't know it until you see it. And like when I see this, I like it, but is part of me think it could be a little bit more better? Yes, but you could show me 2 other versions and I go, you know what, I like this one. But I think from the, is that making any sense to you guys as far as just kind of, you know, I think you're in the right direction, but you know.
What about material wise also?
3-story, it's more conservative, it's more.
If I may, I think the planning commission or the historic district commission. Being that you have immediate access to the first floor of these units. I think they were looking at it almost being like a row home-esque, that you have row homes next to each other. That if you look from the front, it would like this is one unit, like one row home, and then this separate as you go through. And I think that's a feeling I got. I have some examples and also.
Do you have some examples that you can show?
Also the edge that they, so let me, if we could,
If you have some stuff that you could show us that.
I mean, if you look at Westminster, this is not, it's not Main Street.
Yeah.
And it may be.
Correct, I don't wanna be
within-
too limited.
It may be within the National Register District, but it's right on the fringe of it. It's a, I think this is gonna be an example that other people are gonna follow, you know? It should be done right. I think that.
Well, it's
I'm not
hard
there yet.
because, I mean, I've been to Ithaca and they have, you know, like these older historic buildings, but then they have buildings that look kind of like what we just saw there. Like, it looks very cool. And so, but yeah, Mark, if you can kind of show us what you're.
so these is, and some of the elements and
Yeah.
the mayor had already
What we
gotten
were just
to
talking
it.
about, yeah.
Compatibility rather than contrast, and historic don't replicate original design, new construction should be differentiated between the old. So some of the elements, what they looked at, the edge, the sharpness of the front edge. They felt that really didn't match some of the more softer edge curves. You can kind of see how this is one unit, this is a separate unit. This, even though it's one building.
Well, they're row houses.
If used, yeah, and again, that, trust me, that this was, and that's, we
That's
try
like
to
West
argue,
Main Street.
we try to argue the product type isn't necessarily it, but so they talked about certain elements that you might see to pick up and in that architecture, but they also agreed it shouldn't match and look exactly like. They talked about using elements that you might find in downtown to incorporate into the architecture, but yeah, it wasn't a rebuild it like downtown, it was.
Yeah, because like Mark, it just, like, I don't want a long building that looks just like this, because to me, that's so boring. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, go on.
Yeah, I don't,
Well, there's nothing special about that to me.
yeah.
No, it doesn't do anything. for me.
Yeah, I'm just giving the other, but I think some of the elements of, and. You know, I necessarily don't think a slanted roof is appropriate for this type of building.
No, I.
This is one of the examples I was just showing, this is that 4-story building next to a single family detached.
Yes.
Behind it, but these are again, it's a different product type, so it's difficult.
And I don't want it to look like it's a bunch of row homes stuck together either, that they're two, because I think the building needs to all kind of vibe together, and to some of that, like now that's better because it kind of looks like more one building, but I'm not saying I'm in love with this, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't want it to feel like row houses when it's not row homes.
I'm not crazy about a faux look either at the top of these, you know.
Yeah.
I don't, it's just, you're adding architecture that really may not be necessary, but again, there's.
Wait, go back to the, so like, this is somewhat you know, because it has some different kind of lines going on. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's not curvy, it has some variation going on that's kind of interesting.
What do you think? of the
Just
one
looking
up
at
top?
that one you just pointed out to, Dan. To me, that kind of blends in with the old school,
Blends in with what?
the old school look.
This one is kind of, this is kind of interesting. Actually, this could be kind of interesting too. What I don't like, Mark, is I don't like pretending the building is something it's not. And that is when I see this, that looks like row homes, okay? And I don't like that, because then you're pretending the building's something it's not. Where I see this is still, even though there's some variation going on, it still looks like one building.
Yeah.
But it has some interesting stuff going on.
The other thing is just looking at that one picture there. It kind of feels like it was an old building that they renovated into apartments.
Yeah.
You mean that?
But again, that's not what that's not necessarily what you want to do in the historic district. You don't, again, it is new and but there are, I think the bigger thing is demonstrating.
It looks new to me, it just is pulling in different elements.
See, that's exactly, pulling in different elements.
It's pulling in different elements.
And this somewhat does what they were talking about. You have you clearly appears to be separate, but you have a little drop back here that.
Everything you've shown so far, I kind of like the vibe of that more than anything, I think. That I've seen. Like, to me, this is like too modern.
I mean, these.
I don't like it.
These are a little bit more modern looking, which I don't think the historic district was not.
I mean, this is not as, this isn't as bad. But like, this is.
That's DC.
That's too modern.
Yeah, I think these. I think we looked at these, we didn't.
Is it too many colors, like in the material, like the exterior of the building?
I think this, now it starts getting a little too much, but so.
Is that what you're talking about, Dan? It breaks it up too much? You want it to look like one, not like row homes, like.
Well, it goes through the things of.
These are a lot more modern. This is what that one we looked at, where you provide a little softer elements.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm not sure that I understand their point about. I don't think it works on the building. I'm much rather the one that we like the most, like instead of trying to force like some kind of circular nature to it. If you go back to the one that Jay and I liked at one point in time. I like this. This seems historic to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's say.
It seems like it fits in with. You know, and what I like too is.
Don't you think it's colors and building materials?
Well, yes, it's colors and building materials, because if you look now, think this is 4 stories, but you notice how it's the 3-story with the brick, and then this is, you know, something different. And that's kind of cool, because if you remember what their original design on the 4-story, they had some of that be white to kind of lessen the vibe, you know what I mean, the weight of it. So if you did something like more like this, but what's also nice is this has some different like depth to it. So instead of being a building where it's just all like continuous one long thing, you got some depth going on. So I kind of like, I think this is the vibe I like, and I think you could take the vibe of this and work with the architect and kind of transplant it onto that. I don't think you want to do the circular, you know, thing. I think what's nice about this is it has some variation. And I kind of like how this sets back and then this sets out and this.
It's a little bit different variation than what you were talking about, where it looks like it's a bunch of townhouses connected together.
Yeah, I don't like that. Yes. Because this does not look like a bunch of townhouses. This looks like one big building, but it has some variations.
It doesn't. See but it does, you're right, it doesn't look like they're separate buildings, but when you push this out as much as you do, you're saying, you add that shadow, you add that depth. It pops this out and almost gives the feeling and appearance that it's a separate, but it's not.
But it's
And that's-
not.
yeah.
But it breaks up. What it does is right now that building. I will hear.
Breaks up the length of it.
Yeah, this, and it has some variation, but it doesn't have as much.
Here.
You know, if you look at this kind of feels more like one straight continuous thing. Where this has more depth going on, and I think helps break it up.
Yeah.
And also, like, you know, this is very sleek. You know, you have the brick here. But if you notice here, you have this wood popping out, which this is more like what you sometimes would see on older buildings, like a Victorian. You know what I mean? This stuff coming out, but then this wood element here kind of softens it. Because if you look at this to this, that is much better. To me, that is more, I think, in line with, in my mind, of what the HDC is thinking.
And we also talked about balconies, something this design, what this would do, you could put a balcony set in and not, not.
And not every unit has to have a balcony,
Yeah.
yes.
But again, it's kind of hidden more, you can hide it a little bit better than just have it extending out from the front flatter facade like that.
This facade right here looks like something that fits in better in a historic area compared to this facade. That's, I mean, look at those two things side by side, to me, at least to me.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, it's just, to me, that looks to me like. It's not rural, but it's not.
It's better. It's much better.
Better layout.
I like, good job, Mark.
Let me make a suggestion, because we all reserve the right to change our minds over the next month. I think it would be really good if the developer could come back with 3 or 4 proposals, taking into account what we talked about tonight, but give us some things to look at. I think it's really important.
Want to take a picture of that?
Yeah, can you send us a picture of that? Send them a picture of that too.
He took a picture.
Oh, good.
I saw him take.
And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you have to be exactly like this, but it's that to me, when you hit that, that's the vibe. I feel like that's the vibe that is
We're not
more
asking you to
respectful.
Copy it, it's just the idea.
And that building, a lot of it, I would say, would be, comparing it to that one. A lot of it is trim, just molding, period.
Well, not just trim, it's the depth. It's, you have a lot more variation. This does not have near the variation, so you might have to play with your design as far as your units. Because this has a lot more going on as far as depth, which is part of what helps break, which is good. Because you're a very long building and this helps break that up. But yes, the trim element, but it's, yeah, this looks more, this just looks more modern. It looks more modern and I think that's better.
So I think it would also be interesting to see when you guys bring it back, if that change in the material from the top, if it actually ends up doing the opposite of what the white did in the other one. Because it kind of makes it feel taller, you know what I mean, versus how the white just kind of like made it.
Looks larger.
Yeah, it just makes it look taller, the change in material from the
Yeah,
third to the
the
fourth
other
floor.
corners here, this
It
kind,
makes it
this makes
feel
it
bigger.
feel like it's 3,
Doesn't
then
look
the
4 stories.
additional, yeah.
Oh, no, yes, I agree with you. It helps.
Here, helps
Just the
keep it
color
down.
I'm just saying, it would be interesting to see when they come back with, you know, if it is something that would, if it does actually make it look bigger, or if it is, like, if you'd still be comfortable,
Yeah.
you know, with it looking as it does
Yeah.
with that at 4
I mean,
story versus.
well, look at the building up there in the left corner. It's more or less brick on the bottom 3 floors and it's lighter on the top.
Yeah, that's
That's
Dan.
more of what you're wouldn't be better on the one that we like.
And that's a tip, again, we talked about that, that's a typical architectural element to make it look smaller, but still by maintaining.
I think adding that
Everything
to
it puts the
yellow.
light on the one everybody likes best, where it's green, change the green to a lighter color.
Yeah, the top floor.
And if you imagine walking along the sidewalk and you look at this building, it's gonna look 3 stories tall. Cause the setbacks, you have certain setbacks here.
Yeah, I noticed that, cause yeah, some of this is all like, it's set, this part is set back, this is a little, yeah.
And it also adds, I like this depth because they had that 10-foot green space, but instead of having just a 10-foot by 200-foot green, you can have these little back out, it kind of breaks up the green as well, which is also nice as you walk along the street.
Well, and you certainly have the depth here, because the reality is, I mean, yes, it's nice to have this green space back here, but. This building can, you know what I mean, flow back a little bit and vary that and.
But I think also we have the parking spaces that are probably doing the 25, 20, 20, we can reduce the parking to a 60-foot module versus what they're probably showing as 62 by code. That 60 is the standard today. And this is a private parking, so we may not have to get into the green space and just reduce the module of the parking lot and still meet what standard code is for parking for dimensions.
What my overall point is,
I think
they totally have room to do this out front
Yes.
and cause I don't want, when I say I want this, I still don't want the front of the building. In other words, the front is the thing most in front. I don't want that coming out farther than what we just talked about.
Yeah.
Now this little bump out, yes, but like this, I don't want it coming out farther. In other words, I want that.
Maintain the edge.
Yeah,
They may
maintain the
have-
edge,
If
go
they
back.
wanna keep the square footage, they may have to add a little bit to the back of the building.
Correct.
That should be doable, because you got space.
I'm really glad you got it. It was so helpful for you all to pull up some of that stuff to show us, because it really makes you think, because when I see this. I mean, it's cool, but I don't like it because it's pretending the building's something it's not, where to me, this does not do that, but that does.
In a different town.
And to me, like this compared to this is more modern looking. And I think HDC, and I mean, it's our decision at the end of the day, no offense to HDC. But I think this they will be happier with than what this is. And I think it will look good, actually. I think it looks cool.
Well, in all honesty, putting aside the Historic District Commission comments, the facade and the appearance was always the number one issue for me. Not height, not setback.
I like that.
But how it's gonna look.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that we get this right.
I agree with you, because it sets the tone for other
It
things
does.
to
Or a
follow.
lot more.
People are gonna say, wow, and they're gonna come here and they wanna see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you got your fourth floor.
Is it still okay to have some balconies in those setback areas or not?
I think that would be better, having them in the setback areas than having them on areas out front. Keep them kind of hidden.
Yeah, and I'm not like, and I think you play with that from an architectural standpoint. I don't know that the front has to have a ton of balconies. Do you know what I mean? I think you we're giving you a sense, you know what I mean, and play with your architect. You know what I mean? Mark will send you this photo and see what you guys come up with.
Yeah. But I think you should come back with a couple different possibilities, not just one. I think that's gonna be the best. I'd say three or four different concepts.
Yeah. And even if it's only,
Right.
I think it's really important, like the front facade is what's really important.
Exactly.
Because then, I don't want you beating your head against the wall, like worrying about the back and all of that, because when you come back, let's say you come back, at our next meeting. And one of those front facades or front and side facades, like you show here, like if you showed us this angle right here, that's what's really important for us to see. Because then we can say, hey, we like that vibe of that A or B better than anything else. And then you can kind of flesh out B to show all four sides. And I know it takes a little bit of time from a standpoint because we're burning through work sessions, but the good thing about this is I feel, and I've talked to Mr. Debo about this, when you get to the mayor and common council, I want this to be really well thought out and that we all feel very confident in what we're recommending.
Definitely.
Yes.
And you can, when you get it like that form, you can put balconies in, show a picture, take them out, show a picture, put tab of them in and show a picture, that everyone will see the picture, will have a better idea to give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down for those type of features. If you have other features like that you want to try, just add them and then show it without it with them, and we'll be able to,
And I think it's an exciting project for the Yeah, it's an exciting project for downtown for the city. And I think you'll do really, yeah, I think it's great for the neighborhood.
I think it's gonna set the stage for some other redevelopment in that whole stretch.
Correct. And believe me, you put that extra elevator in there like we talked about, you will have people that will be very interested in purchasing a condo in that building.
I think it's already in.
Give me 10 more years, I'll be purchasing a condo in that building.
I've been actually looking in the market for a while. There's nothing out there. Except these places for old folks, and I don't consider myself, I'm only almost 70.
I don't walk on 3 flights of stairs.
No.
Well, you know, part of it, I mean, and we've talked about this so many times. I can, having sold units out in Forest Ridge. You know, how, if those buildings had elevators in them, how I'm not that they don't do
I'm gonna
okay.
always say this,
but-
if you have only known the developer that was here in the beginning,
It was,
he was one of the most difficult people
Really?
I've ever dealt with in my life.
that was such a big mistake overall not to have the elevators in those
Yeah.
buildings. Cause they would,
Oh,
those
my
buildings
God.
today would be doing so much better.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yes.
All right. You guys clear what we're looking for?
Yeah.
Okay, any further comments here?
I did want to hit some of the criteria for approval and action, the findings. Just to go.
Just so
through these
Wayne
a
can
bit,
start
yeah.
thinking,
So again, we talked about the density, if it's appropriate, and I think we covered that, the 33.
definitely.
Similar to. There's a discussion about transportation, and we pointed out that this is a grid pattern roadway design surrounding it. The developer is connecting Sycamore Street to East Green Street. From connecting Sycamore Street from East Green to West Winchester Street, that's that. It dead ends right now, so that'll improve connectivity and traffic movement for the neighborhood.
Mr.
Not only
Divo,
this
can I
development-
ask you a question? Will this, will there be some kind of traffic study related to this though? When it
Yes.
starts working its way through the site development plan? And then one other point I just wanted to make and because I drove around that area and I noticed that when you pull out from those alleys, you know what I mean? And I can't remember the names because I'm terrible right now, but onto Green Street, your sight distance is not really phenomenal. And partly it's because the way the grade of the road comes down and the parking spaces along the road. So I think it's real important
That's Sycamore.
when you're
Sycamore.
working on these parking spaces out front, like even coming out this way on Ralph Street. You want to make sure that the first parking space is held back enough that the car doesn't end up blocking your view.
And it is doing, if you look at the plan, you can see there's these, it bumps out.
You have to
and
be able
then-
to, yeah.
So they are proposing, so when you pull up, a car can't be parked right there at the intersection.
Yes.
Those artificial islands.
Yeah.
Will be blocked.
So one, it allows a car to move a little bit further to the intersection with better sight distance. Two, there's not a car right at the corner blocking your sight distance. And that'll be one of the elements we'll look at the site
At
plan
the
to
site
show.
I just wanted to point it out because I noticed it, yeah.
And I was gonna hit on that, but good point.
I'm sorry. Okay.
So it's, let's see, parking again is accessed from Sycamore Street, extended. And as I talked about, in South Ralph Street, so is no direct access from this property, from the parking area onto East Green. That's a benefit. So again, people they have two options.
Right.
It's not one roadway, it's two roadways they can access to get onto Green Street or turn left coming out and go back to the community. This is a grid system that offers multiple different ways to access around and get out around the city. The daily trips, we talked a little, that was brought up a little bit. As a multifamily dwelling unit, your daily trips are 5.44 per unit. A single family is 9.54. So everybody thinks higher density, more cars. It's actually multifamily has much less trips per day. AM is 0.31 AM peak hour trips, 0.43 PM peak hour trips per dwelling unit. So we'll ask for that study for confirmation and look at the access points as you're coming in and out. But again, everybody believes multifamily brings more cars. It doesn't. Most people don't have, you don't have a big front yard to have 5 cars, and you're not having, you know.
And correct me if I'm
5
wrong, though,
buildings. So-
these are 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms.
Yeah,
if
one
I
and
remember
two
correctly,
bedrooms,
yeah.
so that's why the trips are so much lower. Water and sewer is available for the project. The city has plenty of water available, which everybody should be aware of. The property does slope upward from East Green Street to Winchester Street, so this property is a little bit lower. That is one of the elements it talks about, the topography, if any uniqueness to it. There's no issues. There won't be any with sight lines, I don't believe, or access, and there's no environmental features on the property. Staff believes that the project is compatible with the character of the neighborhood. The height, orientation, and architectural character as discussed tonight of the structures. We believe if the changes are made to be a little bit more compatible with the historic district, would be compatible with the neighborhood and the housing stock.
And Mr. Debo, I want to be clear, like in our report, and maybe we can point it out, will be drafted. I do not think that it being a 4-story is necessarily incompatible with, I mean, all you have to do is drive around downtown Westminster and you're gonna see things that are pretty darn tall.
Again, I think you look at the property adjacent to, as mentioned, as Commissioner Bear mentioned, it has the pitched roof, even though it looks like the height of it is a 3 to 3.5 story building. The building behind it is if it's gonna be taller, it's taller than this building would be. I think the flat roof adds that height down, so you don't have a pitched roof. So I think it would be compatible. We believe that it is served with safe, efficient, adequate pedestrian vehicular network. I think this project improves the pedestrian network. You get a nice larger sidewalk along Green Street, a nicer separation between cars parked, cars driving, and pedestrians. Sidewalks are gonna be provided on all street.
Well, and this is close enough to downtown. I can imagine people walking from that building to Covalent to, and as things continue to happen to some of the restaurants that are along Main Street, I could totally see that.
And that's why you see not only sidewalks on Green Street, but you're getting on all 4 streets. Winchester Street will have a new sidewalk, Sycamore and South Ralph. So you're adding not only better pedestrian movement for the site, but also.
That'll be nice for
community.
that neighborhood, actually,
coming
that
down.
better,
Yeah. And newer sidewalks, again, much nicer. The parking is met. They meet the parking requirements on site. So the Orange Street parking, as was mentioned in the work session, isn't needed and it can't be used to meet the parking. It has to be all on site and is meeting that. There are some implementations, some comprehensive plan elements that I just wanted to point out that this is addressing. Goal H1 objective 2 is to promote infill development and other redevelopment options in underutilized residential or commercial lots, which this clearly is.
This is definitely.
Goal H1 objective 3 is plan for increased density to provide high quality projects that will balance the need for accommodating growth and maintaining small town character. I think the discussion tonight is geared directly towards that. Goal H1 objective 4 is to create an interesting, unique development projects which reflects the values and cultures of the people who reside in Westminster. I think again, the discussion tonight from people who reside in Westminster, it's clear that we're trying to take into account the Westminster itself. And also to promote the creation of workforce housing stock. This is a product that isn't seen today, 1 to 2 bedrooms, owner occupied. Again, I think that goes a long way to trying to help workforce housing.
We just had Jake Day for the benefit of, Jake Day, the Secretary of Housing and Community Development, was up here last week. And if this project was done, we would have taken him there to see this, because he would love something like this. This is the kind of stuff the state wants to see. They want to see more, more density where it's supposed to be.
Yeah. And then finally, just for actions and findings, these are elements, section 164-4522, that staff just wanted to point out that staff believes that the site plan does fulfill the purposes and requisites set forth in the CN zone. You'll notice it was mentioned the other plan is more of a concept plan. It's very simple. These plans, as part of the CN, have to be a little bit more engineered.
Yeah.
That's why you get more of the stormwater management, the grading, the elements, the density, dimensions, everything that typical to a site plan, so it's a little bit, and that is again a requirement of the CN zone that's more detailed than you typically would get with a planned development community. The proposed development complies with the purpose, standards, and regulations of the CN zone. The proposed development provides, again, safety, convenience, and amenities to the residents of the development and is compatible with adjacent development. So again, you're providing the parking on site. There's also a green area that is separating this development with the development behind it and the surrounding community. So you're providing green space. You're providing an amenity against sidewalks, walkability. There's several elements this project provides for not only development, but the community. And finally, the proposed structure and multifamily residential use is compatible with existing and proposed adjacent development, which is primarily residential on this side, commercial on the other side. But again, I think this provides a buffer and will certainly not affect the commercial side at all. And with that, I just wanted to point those elements out. Again, these are, and hope the planning commission would accept these elements, again, as maybe guided.
Yeah, a lot of this ties in, and this is to me, this is a great opportunity as an infill parcel. It is a great opportunity to pull down the PD 9 on.
CN, this is the compatible neighborhood.
Oh, I'm sorry.
CN.
I'm sorry. Think of the other one.
That
That one,
I
thank
was
you.
gonna say, you're gonna be doing the same review
Yeah,
for us.
No, the CN
We're
zone, I'm
gonna
sorry, I've
do the
confused the
avenue,
one
but
before,
It won't
but
be quite as complex as
It
this.
won't be quite as complex, exactly. That's the architecture should be for the other one. I think that is going off topic, but yeah, this is a little bit more detailed, and I think that's why it's important. We're getting it right and being so specific as to what we want now. That
this is a great, this could be a really neat project. And I'm excited because I feel like, we've given you direction as far as your 4 stories, told you about the setback, and now I think it's just a matter of refining and coming up with the elevations that are gonna hit on all cylinders.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's a great project.
Yep. All right, anything further, Mr. Depot?
I do not. Thank you.
All right, so you guys understand what you gotta do?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Carroll County Liaison Report.
Well, that's me right now.
Is there something for you to tell?
Have somebody scare us.
Yeah, no. We did get a new liaison. I believe her name is Carly. She just started with the county, and she will be here starting next month.
Okay.
Looking at the things that they provided me, there is nothing really to provide you, other than the fact that they're starting working on the master plan. Just this week, they went before the county commissioners to discuss the buildable land inventory and water and sewer stuff. I don't know that from the stuff that they provided, but I was at the meeting, so I know that they talked about that at the meeting. Also, they're gonna be doing a new water and sewer update soon as far as an amendment cycle. The fall one is going through, starting right now. We're not involved in that, but other municipalities are. And so there'll be another one, I think, possibly in February.
Okay.
So always providing an opportunity if we need anything to change.
All right, thank you. All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
planning commission comments. We kind of beat the horse.
I think we've talked enough for one night.
Anybody really serious? Anybody have any?
I don't believe I had anything.
I know,
I would
I
have
don't
forgotten
have
it by now.
Do we, Mr. Debo, do we have, for next month, I mean, obviously, some of these things might be coming back to us with more. Do we have anything else kind of working its way towards us?
McDaniel Overlook.
I'm
Oh.
not certain that
Okay.
we're.
McDaniel Overlook is,
That's it, lots that we wanted to.
The project came before you, it was 4 lots. You were asking, can you connect the roadway back? So at the end of the day, you can't connect the roadway back. That's not owned by the county, it's privately owned. They don't maintain that back roadway at all. I thought that was interesting because you would assume they would have, but they do not. So you can't connect 2, and they're proposing only 2 houses now. So it's gonna be a minor subdivision, not a.
How many was it before?
4.
Wow. Okay.
Where's that
Yeah,
at?
3 or less is a
that's
minor.
back behind,
What's that mean?
They got
All
the
great.
pictures.
It was it was a difficult piece.
Yes, and I think that's what they're finding, or they're just trying to move forward with the project.
Yeah.
So
I think
they
they-
are resubmitting for that. Do we have any other? I can't think of anything else. Actually, you?
I think
Mr.
they're, no,
Mr. Debo, if you don't mind, can you share even all the photos that you were showing? It just is nice, because,
I'll send them to.
yeah, if you don't mind sending them to us, because it's just nice for reference. Because it was instructive. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to kind of put that together, because as a brainstorming, exercise, that was extremely helpful. Because a lot of times with these kind of elevation related things, you know in your head what you want, but until you start seeing something that triggers it, then you're like, oh wait, that's kind of what and so it's so helpful.
And it also shows
I agree,
you guys saw things that I absolutely don't want that. So that, it also starts removing some potential
Yes,
concepts, but
it was a very helpful.
That
Yeah.
sounds like the guy one time, he said about pornography, he said, I don't know what it looks like, but I know when I don't.
I know what it is when I see it.
I know it is when I see it, so.
I don't know that I would have gone there with you now.
Just made me think of that.
We'll cut that out.
The one question that came up about the project out by Carol Lutheran Village we discussed a few meetings back.
Bell Road, Wakefield.
Wakefield
the-
Overlook.
Wakefield.
So the two.
What is the status of that?
So the Wakefield project that was brought before you, they determined that the density, at least this that was presented to us, that the proposed density or number of units wasn't sufficient to pay for the cost of infrastructure and everything else. So we met with them. We stressed the fact that us, staff, as well as the planning commission, like the design of the loop system, that green area in between, preserving the environmental area. We talked about maybe making the roadways a little bit not as wide, try to save some cost there, but also picking up a couple more housing units. They have not resubmitted to us for that, so we did meet with that, so that's on hold. The property adjacent to that parcel F1, that's an equal amount of density, about 20, that hasn't been before you, but we're still waiting for an actual just submission for that one, so we can actually start processing it. And really quick, we did meet with the county today about Chick-fil-A and Market Street Extended. Staff's concern is it's two parcels. If you can imagine Market Street extending from the traffic circle up to 140. It's to the right-hand side, you have two lots. Chick-fil-A will be at the corner, and they're proposing access to Chick-fil-A right across the street from where, and then connecting to Old Baltimore. Staff wants the design to also include access to lot 2. Our concern is that if you don't look at it today and don't plan out the full potential design of the roadway with both access points, if that property tries to develop, can they actually get the turn lanes and other elements that you would have to get for a second development? We're asking them to design it, but you don't have to build it. Phase 1 could just be built to serve what's necessary for Chick-fil-A, but I want to see it's physically possible that you can access lot 2 in a reasonable, safe way before we just automatically say Chick-fil-A, get your access points.
So if you're standing on 140, lot 2 is behind Chick-fil-A?
Yeah,
Or
so if
to
you,
the-
if you,
to the right of
if you hit the traffic circle and you're heading north to 140, lot 2 is the first lot. And lot 1 would be the second lot when at the
So
corner.
you want
lot
one
on
entrance
there.
into both lots?
The staff asked for that. It's not a long roadway, so we asked
I don't
for that to be
disagree.
looked at, that you have one access point that then serves both.
That lot 2 is a large lot.
Yeah, it's,
I mean,
it's,
that whole property was 10 acres or something back there.
Yeah,
And
and we can
Chick-fil-A's
shoot
trying
that
to use
to
a
you.
couple acres, so I think that's good.
yeah.
There's also a
Because
lot of
there could be
stormwater.
a lot of stuff can.
Well, lot 2, that's taking all the stormwater management, I think, for both parcels as well as the roadway.
Yeah, but
So
it's a
that's-
lot of land.
But there's still a big
Is that-
area.
Yeah, that makes
So that
sense.
property is all in the city.
Yes, It was annexed in.
So the county's role will be connecting from the traffic circle.
They'll own the roadway, so. They're working with Chick-fil-A on the design. Stonegate is actually on the hook for the design of Market Street, at least partial cost for the design. From that up, but ultimately the county's responsible for building it along with Chick-fil-A. So they're working that out now.
I think it's really critical because we know this is gonna come up about traffic, diversion of traffic. How much traffic will just come back to the circle? If I was, say, leaving Wawa and crossed over, now I would have to cut through that neighborhood to get down to Baltimore Boulevard. If this roadway is connected, it would be really important to know how much of that traffic would be diverted away from the neighborhood by people just going straight down to the circle.
100%.
I think.
I'm with you. It would make no sense to cut through.
Exactly, yeah.
And I go down to the circle, I don't even have to stop, I just yield and go.
Yeah,
I don't think you can-
exactly.
And I think it's important to have that information.
Yeah, because I don't believe the neighbors will believe.
No,
The neighbors believe it's
you
gonna
just have to be ready for that one, because that is gonna be a.
Well, I think partly though, there is a neighbor or two that is spinning people up
Of
with
course,
this information.
but you understand where I'm coming from, don't you?
Yeah, no, so
Well, that's good for
I just want to
tourists.
clarify,
Good for tourists.
So-
On that traffic.
your idea is if the circle's down here, Stonegate's here, the circle's here, 140's up here. You want one, as I'm going this way towards 140, you want one common entrance into the Chick-fil-A and lot 1 and lot 2, where so it comes in like right at the center. I go this way to Chick-fil-A, I go this way to what that
Yeah.
parcel, because you would like to avoid two different entrances along there, which I don't disagree with you.
Unless they can demonstrate they can get to. I'm worried that when Chick-fil-A, when it gets developed as it is, and Chick-fil-A gets developed out and lot 2 comes in. We're not gonna get the potential development of lot 2 because of the ability to access and inability to provide the necessary safe XL, decel turning lanes off of it that.
So why do a joint, do it now, plot it out now that you have the joint, I agree with
And
you.
we're not asking for it to be developed today. We went physically.
You want
can
them
we
to
get-
demonstrate to you what can be. done.
Yes.
What is the zoning of that parcel also be?
Yes, it's B
Okay.
business. So you can get another restaurant right
No.
there that we otherwise may have to say it can't. So I don't want to shortchange not only the property owner, but the city and the residents of having the appropriate development of the
Okay.
property.
And Mr. Depot, where the tree streets are. And of course, the devil's in the details, traffic study and design and all of that. But I do want I always want us to keep in mind, whatever we can do to mitigate. Or make sure that there doesn't end up being a lot of traffic on, because I think certain people in that neighborhood are spun up. By certain people, but I want us to have some confidence that what ends up being designed there is doing a really good job of actually making, I think if it's done
Making it
right,
better.
I think it's gonna make it better if it's done
I
right.
think significantly.
I guess the only problem would be if traffic backed up in the cul-de-sac. Then people would try to avoid the cul-de-sac.
Of the traffic circle, you mean?
And the idea, not the cul-de-sac, the traffic circle. Then people would say, I'm not going through that because that's a nightmare. I'm gonna go around through the tree streets. That would be.
I don't think you get that. I think most of the traffic entering Chick-fil-A is gonna be from 140 and they're gonna go back onto 140.
Correct, the only people that you're gonna be having going to Chick-fil-A are the people that live in Stonegate that have little kids that need to run.
Yeah.
run over there.
But again, but that's a very good point still, that distance from the traffic circle to that second entrance, that's exactly, if it does get
I
backed
think
up at
that's
all,
why you want,
how do you have that access in the two? So that's a good point. It's
I
exactly
think
what
one
we're looking
entrance
at, that
makes
you
a
could-
lot of sense.
Yeah.
Mr. Depot. I think
That's
Definitely,
great.
but you have to look at it really carefully now.
Yeah,
You can't come back later and try,
I'm glad you're holding their feet to the fire on that, I agree with you.
transportation and land use should be done collectively together,
Yeah, the county will
you don't
build
wait
it,
till later.
but the county won't be able to build it if you don't. They have to have the land owned. or at least deeded.
But the county, even owning the roadway, will have to grant access to that lot too. But again, maybe it's not potential of development. And I don't want the city to be placed into that situation. I'd like to know now.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I agree. I agree. And then, but eventually that's gonna come
That'll
to
be
us.
before you,
Yeah. And I want us to be real sensitive to, you know, addressing legitimate concerns of that neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know. Because certain people just don't want something to happen, period. But, you know, I do want to be conscious of that neighborhood.
We just have to do our job. We have to
Correct.
ask all the questions, be critical, and make the right decisions, so.
Yeah.
All right, so can I entertain a motion?
Motion so made.
Motion been made, adjourn, motion been made to adjourn, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.